You're with your host, Julian Lee, here, and today I'm joined by the very interesting Trevor Alexander, and we're going to talk about designing an unbreakable design career. Welcome to the show, Trevor.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Trevor, what is an ugly design career?
It was fun to come up with that topic, and it was actually from a mentor of mine when I was in an early startup, and he had said before you ever name something, check if the URL is available first. So never name a company first. Wait to get the
Yeah, I do.
URL. And so this is one of the ideas I had for the book, and ultimately the URL was done. Ugly design career. I think when you talk about design and trying to build yourself as a UI UX designer in a career, the notion of the prettiest, most gorgeous solutions, like phenomenal portfolios, award-winning work kind of comes to mind. So what I liked with ugly design career is the person in the trenches, the person with your teammates, the person coming up with what's needed at that last minute to get something finished. So which in some ways honestly involves ugly designs because it's going to benefit the team and the company. So I think ugly design career for me was around, you know, doing what it needs doing what needs to be done to provide the most value to the team, the customer, and your coworkers.
Yes, and do you know what I like about it? We talked about sizzle, selling the sizzle. It's got that curiosity, and I'm like, what is this all about? So, you know, and a lot of people come up with a really boring book title that really has no curiosity. So the curiosity is a good thing, and that's about marketing, and that's kind of the intersection of what we're going to be talking about. Is that these designers that want to have UX software designing careers, and then you've got the stakeholders, which are the companies, the startups, and what they want and need, and how do we bridge that, and what are designers doing wrong, in your opinion, Trevor?
Yeah, I think ultimately design started to get a lot of attention, especially with the unbelievable success of Steve Jobs and Apple and those type of things. Design really came to the forefront. Well-designed products, well-designed applications, and which is wonderful. It's great. Like it's really exciting to be like it's good-looking, good working things at the forefront. Awesome. But when I think the one thing that got a little bit twisted is that designers started to think of themselves as the center, as the most important thing. Like design is the most important thing of anything else in the process. And an anecdote I like to tell, or like a fable, would be, if there was a competition to drive a car, to build a car and drive it across the country. Like that's the competition. You take a team of designers, you take a team of engineers. The designers will come up with the most beautiful car. It's going to be gorgeous. It's going to be aerodynamic. It's going to be functional. It's going to be amazing to sit in this thing, but it doesn't move. It doesn't work, right? It doesn't function. The engineering team, conversely, they're going to come up with it's going to be ugly. It's going to be really unintuitive. It's going to be hard to understand, but it will drive. So ultimately, for the actual task, that engineering team is more important than the design, right? And there's a bunch of nuance there about like what part is design and engineering, but I think it complete base level facts is to appreciate the fact that without someone to actually build something, design isn't important. And I'm a designer saying this, right? So that's kind of like the shock of what this book is trying to get through, is that if you can kind of remove yourself from that notion that the design is the absolute most important part of any kind of software you're going to build, you can come at it in a much more honest way to start to build really great things. Because the secret third option is when the engineers and the designers are working together. Like that's a car everybody's going to actually want to buy, want to drive, and it's also going to win the competition. So that's where the power lies. But I think it starts with that base level understanding that if it doesn't work, if it doesn't actually do something, the prettiest design in the world is not going to save you.
Interesting, yeah. And you brought up Steve Jobs, and to me, like Apple is the epitome of design over function. Like, I always feel that Apple products just look amazing and they just are just incredible, but I always find that they don't necessarily, function better than some of the other stuff that's out there. So And the other thing you brought up was, we've got the engineers and we've got the designers, and they're kind of like, one's from Mars and one's from Venus. And how do we? What are some of the differences? What are some of the frictions, I guess, that happen with these two groups?
Yeah, for sure. Actually, I recently just had this. I was reviewing for somebody online a case study they'd put together. This is an aspiring designer. He wanted to put together this, beautiful portfolio piece. Hey, this is what I can do. This is what I designed. And one of the solutions he was trying to solve for was, oh, people complain. He did some user research, and they came back saying, oh, I don't have this bank, or I don't have that card, so I can't use this app, or I find it difficult to use the payment method you have. And this designer's solution was like, oh, so I just designed 10 more. I just added 10 more options. Okay, so as from a design perspective, as far as like pixels and like drawing it, that's wonderful. But when you think about the engineering effort that has to go into adding 10 extra payment gateways, that's not actually feasible. And you can imagine if the designer turned around, went to, the CEO or like the stakeholders and said, hey, look at this, we can add 10 amazing new payment gateways. And then you're going to bring it to the engineers like, okay, just do this, would you? Everybody loves it already. And now they're the bad guys. Like there's no, design. One of the key parts with designers is empathy, right? The ability for a designer to put themselves in another person's shoes, but often that's only put onto the end user, which is a great place to start. But ultimately, if you're not putting it the same empathy on the developers, are going to have to build your thing. Whatever you're designing, they have to, bleed and sweat to make a reality. And if you're not coming in from that place of service, that place of empathy, there's all that friction that you kind of mentioned about. So I think with a
Yeah.
designer's creativity and desire for solutions, they can go far and wide and look at all these amazing things we can do. But they'll sometimes lose factor that there's people that actually have to build it. So it's important to kind of bridge that gap and be the person that's an advocate for the user as well as the engineers.
Do you think designers need to learn how to do just a little bit of basic coding so they can understand what's involved?
Absolutely. So it's a bit of a tricky situation because there's some push for designers to completely become developers. So what's kind of called in the industry as a unicorn. So someone who can design it and then turn around and actually build it. I don't think that's the case. I think you're exactly right, where it's, if you could just understand a little bit of code, a little bit of programming, like build a website, add a bit of JavaScript so it's interactive, just to feel the unbelievable frustration of when 1 + 1 = C. Like it's like, why
Yeah.
all the code works, like why isn't this going? So
Yeah.
that next day when you say, why can't you just design this thing, it's like,
Mm.
oh right, I built it once, this is really hard.
Yeah, and every little change you make has to play nice with everything else, and there's all those other things that will happen and break. And well, it's always
Yeah.
breaking, isn't it, when you're doing these things? And so the people that are interested in this book, would you say they are designers that are, they're plugging away, and they're just, I guess they're just looking to get to the next level that they're not quite at, and this is going to help tell them some of the missing pieces, I guess, that they need to work on. What do you think people do need to work on, these designers?
Yeah, so it's a lot of I think it's really coming at it from a service perspective again.
Yeah,
So and but being understanding the unbelievable value a designer can be as being the crudgel, like being right in the middle of it. Like designers have such an amazing opportunity to be at the absolute center of so many parts of the business, and yet all they want to focus on is the craftsmanship of the visual pieces or even like the user experience. That's all they want to focus on. A user above all else, forget it. As opposed to, and that rears its ugly head in many ways as far as no one, I'm the artist, I'm the designer, so it's my ideas. I don't want to take other ideas. I don't want to shift my vision based on timelines or developer constraints. Uh, I don't want to work with others, like any number of pieces. Whereas if you can be at the absolute center of it so that developers trust you and work with you because they know they have your best interest in heart. Business people know that you are striving for the business to be a success because this design is prettier but this design drives more sales, like drives more clicks. You go with that one every time. And if you're able to approach it from that business standpoint, and then you turn around, so you're working with sales, you're in the middle of there. How can we help these people sell more? How can I help this business succeed more? How can I make the developers' lives easier in everything that I do, while also then advocating for the user so their end experience is also excellent. So, as opposed to worrying so much about that visual piece, about that user experience piece, and being one dimensional, understand that by approaching it from a real service attitude, you can just be right in the center and drive it through.
Yeah, I mean it's about all the stakeholders involved, and often there are people that are kind of just working individually, and they say, "Look, I do this. That's not my job." But really, they're going to have a better time if they do understand customer, the sales team, and the engineers, and what can happen, I suppose, is they just get into better projects. They have a good experience with it, and it can open up more opportunities. Would you say, Trevor?
Oh, 1,000%. I love what you said too. Like as far as like this is my role. This is what I do. I mean, a few things that I mentioned, and I'd highly recommend, it would be to stay late with developers. For instance, so you're all building a product and you're about to release it. Even if you have nothing to do, like as far as like you finished your job, so you just pack up your laptop and go home. But if the developers are going to stay late and have a big, huge crunch to try to work, just being there to support and test and work and plow through to a system and go, like that's a huge piece. So I love when you had mentioned that. My apologies. Your original question, I went on a tangent and forgot where I'd started for.
Oh, that's all right. We still got some good stuff out of it. And Trevor knows what he's talking about. You've had 3 successful exits. Do you want to tell us quickly about those projects that you worked on and sold?
Yeah. Yeah, of course not. And to be clear, I was on teams with those. So I really want to say it's my exit. It was like I was part of 3 teams that had successful exits. The first one was one of the first companies I'd work with. It's a story that I tell at the beginning. And I had been fired from my original job and had kind of understood that I didn't really have anything to lose, nothing to, because I was very young at the time, didn't have any responsibilities. So recently fired from a job. On the side, I'd been doing this work for a tiny little startup up in Ottawa, Canada. And I thought it was the coolest project in the world. It was like a GPS for a Game Boy, a little cartridge you could plug in. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. I loved it. I had no job. I had no.
This is obviously before smartphones.
Oh yeah. This very much so. So it
doesn't sound cool right now.
Yeah, right. So we'd got into. So I remember I called the startup founder, and I really like these people. I trusted them. Like, all right, if you give me a place to sleep and just food to eat, I'll come work for you for free. Like, let's just get this built. I absolutely love this product. I was on a bus the next day, and I lived and worked for free for the next year in the founder's basement. Ultimately, and it was amazing because so many lessons I learned came from those people, those founders. One like really was a mentor of mine and just shaped so much of how I approached work. And much of the stuff in the book like kind of comes from those types of lessons. Anyway, so that company, we drive and we did crazy hours, 80 hours a week working with these, and eventually it did sell. So it sold off to a larger smartphone company, which eventually brought it in as their own GPS software. And that was really the launch of the rest of the career. From then on, I never once applied for a job because every place I went to, I just kept
you, or did they just give you more food when they sold it?
After a bit, I had to keep working for sure, so it wasn't some grandiose thing. But they took care of me well, and we continued on. It was very good food in that house. I'll say that for sure. That was an amazing couple of years. The other ones were
good food.
Yeah. Later introduced to an amazing group of folks, continued working with them, and had the 2 other exits with them as well. But it was very much everything captured from what I'm trying to like say in this part, where it's head down, teamwork, driving to the finish, providing value, not working about it. So the design and a lot of the design lessons around, it's not what really kind of sold those designs was how it functioned, how it supported the sales team, how it supported getting this particular client. So just that one-to-one experience of seeing this is not about the prettiest design that a designer wants to implement or even the greatest user experience. It's about the company, what's actually going to sell, what the ultimate customer who's going to pay actually wants, and how to craft the work for that. So the next two startups for sure had some massive hard driving lessons. A lot of lessons, a lot of humility, like just constant lessons, a lot of mistakes. But yeah, being part of a successful exit with company was fantastic.
It's about compromise, really, isn't it? Like people need to compromise, and because you've got to just do everything, so make everybody happy. Is that difficult with designers? Like where you say, "Look, I know you want it to look amazing, but maybe almost amazing is going to be a bit more doable."
Yeah,
They're
almost
almost like
amazing in
artists.
two. Yeah. Oh, they're so close to artists, but they really need to understand they're not. Because almost amazing in 2 weeks beats amazing in 6 months every time, every single
Yeah.
time. And the compromise is hard, and it comes from a good place. Because these designers, they have that empathy, they have that drive to produce the greatest experience where people are going to touch it. They want the solutions. So when it gets presented to them that this thing isn't going to quite work the way you want it, it's going to be maybe a little bit janky for the first version until we get some traction. It's really hard to stomach that because you just know in your heart of hearts, like I I put my soul into this because I thought this was going to be really great for the user. But if you can do that, again, that's kind of where your design career can really take off because you become recognized amongst those peers that okay, this is a designer who gets it. This is somebody I want on my team wherever I go.
Awesome, Trevor. And this book is probably good not just for designers, but also founders, I suppose, because you're speaking to all of those involved groups, aren't you?
Yeah, I had a lot of my developer friends, the ones I came up with, review it. I've had a few like founders and entrepreneurs read it as well, and I'll say it's fairly. A lot of it's not so. I can't sit here and try to claim like this is the most groundbreaking pieces of advice. And in fact, there's one part that's actually copped from Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People around focusing on one circle of influence. Had you ever read that book or heard of it?
I've read like the cliff notes of it.
Yeah, yeah. Which is honestly better because the amount of like fluff in that book I
Yeah,
find is kind of
there's always
thick.
they always put a bit of padding. Yeah,
Yeah,
awesome. Well,
so I can't
I'm.
really.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to
Oh
wrap it
yeah,
up.
sorry, I just
Trev,
can't. Oh, oh, sorry. I suppose just to close out the thought. Yeah, I can't really claim that this is some of the most groundbreaking, unbelievable type of ideas, but it's just put in this context. I think becomes very useful.
Yeah, it's very useful, and people in that world read a lot of books. So I think it's a good one, and I think a lot of people will be interested in having a look inside that world, especially when we've got somebody who has, basically been in the trenches. So I'd like to thank you for coming on, Trevor. And if you want to check out Trevor's book, I'll put the URL up there, uglydesigncareer.com. Wonderful stuff. Thanks for coming on, Trevor Alexander.
Oh, thanks so much, Julian. It was so great to talk to you today.
Wonderful. Thanks everyone for listening and watching. I'm going to wrap it up and I'll see you very soon on another episode. Thanks, Trevor. Sorry for
Thanks.
jumping on you halfway through a thought there.
Oh no, I apologize. I should have wrapped it up. I didn't. I didn't catch it.
That's all.
The worst one was when like you'd asked a question and I went on a tangent and I forgot the main point. I was going to try to come back.
It's all. God, you should hear me. I ramble and lose the plot regularly.
No, I really enjoyed the show. I was watching some of the previous episodes. It was excellent. Really, really wonderful show you got going on.
Oh, thanks, mate. All right, mate. Well, I'm going to I'll turn that into some content and I'll flick you through an email once I get to that. Should be pretty soon.
Nice. Yeah, I'll toss it up on as much social as I can, then share it around.
Awesome. Have a great day, Trevor.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Have a good one.
Bye.